Well, if you've just bought a new drill press or you'd like to expand the use of your existing one, we've got some great ideas and some great tips on how you can make your tool even more versatile. In fact, to start right out, we have a couple of things on this one. We've got a little utility tray on one side that can hold, in my case, my glasses and chuck key and some of the tools we'll be using a little bit later. We've also got, if you can see in the back here, a little vacuum hose attachment that will allow you to suck off the dust that's created while you're doing some of these drilling operations. A lot of projects call for drilling a mortise, and if you don't have a dedicated mortising machine, a drill press with an accessory kit like this made from the Delta people works very well. You'll find that most of these kits contain all the things that you see here, and we'll kind of go over them one at a time. This is what's called a hollow chisel. You can see how they work, and the auger fits down the center of it, and the sizes go from 1/2 inch down to 1/4. This is a fence and hold down assembly that fits on the table. This is the chisel holder, and you'll see a series of adapter rings here that are used for almost any tool. You don't have to have a Delta to use a Delta accessory. It works very well in the machine, and we're going to show you how to set it up. So here's our quill alignment pin. So I'm going to put this in temporarily to make it easier to attach my holder. Now here's a little trick to tighten that ratcheting clamp quickly on the back of the hold-down fence. I'm going to pull up on the ratchet handle because the quarters are a little tight back here. Insert a screwdriver in the slot, and while holding up on the handle actually get the sloppiness out of this. Once we're tight, now I'm allowed to bring in the ratchet and have it work the way it normally would. And there we go. Okay, well I'm going to add an auxiliary fence here. I kind of like doing this because it gives me a little bit more flexibility when I'm doing my layouts. Now this is the heart of the system. This is your hollow chisel and the auger that fits inside. You'll probably find out really quickly that it doesn't go the other way. So just slide your auger in through the bottom edge, and now we're going to attach this to the drill press. Here's how you do it. These are fairly sharp at the bottom, so what I like to do is kind of protect my fingers here. So I'll take a small scrap of wood and use that to hold it while I slide the chisel up into place. And there's a couple of things to understand. What I want to do is make sure that the chisel itself doesn't butt right up against the chisel holder. I want to leave this out about 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/16 of an inch or so, to allow me some adjustment later on. So now what I'm doing is I'm putting the dime in here, pushing up against it, and then lock. And now the key is to lock the drill bit in. So do that with a few turns, and we're all set. Sometimes what I like to do too is just flip this chuck around and make sure that I tighten the other 2 holes. It has a tendency on smaller bits to hold it a lot better. And now for the important part. To allow the correct auger depth, I'm now going to take up that space that I provided with the dime by just loosening the lock nut, slide this up, and retighten. I now have a chisel that sits just slightly higher than the edge of that auger bit. This allows the auger bit itself to do the work, and the chisel will clean up the hole after the fact. We're going to do one more thing before we decide to start doing the drilling, and that is to align the chisel itself to make sure that it is parallel against the workpiece that we're planning on drilling. Now, there are a couple of schools of thought. You notice the opening in here that's going to allow chips to fall out of that can be placed either facing you, a little bit left, or a little bit right. I honestly don't know that it makes any difference. We are going to have some vacuum control on the back side, so what we may want to do is actually turn this to the side of the vacuum control so that when we square up this chisel face, we have the chips ejecting in a spot where the vacuum can pull them away. And now the object is to do our layout. So what we'll do is raise the table to within about 1/2 inch or so of the chisel, and then back off this fence so that I can get my alignment. Now, I've done a layout on the front here where I'd like my mortise to go. Generally speaking, it's nice to start off on each corner. So drill a full mortise on each corner and then fill in the opening. That way the drill bit and chisel seem to follow a straighter line. And to get my overall depth, if I want this to be 1 inch deep, I'm going to take my sliding rule, lay it at 1 inch, and make a mark. Now the easiest way to do this is to bring the chisel until it matches that mark, which we have here. Slide your depth stop so it locks, and you now have your predetermined depth that will stop. One of the nice things about this Delta drill press is it has a digital readout, and that makes setting the depth of this bit even easier. We're going to lower the bit until it just touches the surface of the wood. I can now zero out that reading, and by just watching the digital display, lower this until it reads 0.75, which is 3/4 of an inch. Slide my stop lock on the side to lock it in, and I now have my 3/4 of an inch depth locked in without having to mark the side of the board. Pretty nice feature. Again, to drill, we're going to need the hold down. I want just enough pressure on this hold down so that I can still slide the board past. And again, we're going to start on the left side and make our plunge. And do this gently. Do not force the drill bit. There's one side of the mortise. And here's the other side. When drilling holes in here, it's really nice to have a quick release clamp. This one mounts right in the table and makes it really easy for me to just kind of slide the material down and reclamp. And it comes in especially handy when you're drilling big holes like this with a Forstner. Really gives a little bit more strength where you really need it. One of the things a drill press really excels at is drilling multiple holes all at the same depth. Somewhat like this, where you've drilled a series of holes spaced for pin supports. And I do this quite a bit when I'm making cabinets. One of the problems is, though, how do you keep those holes evenly spaced? Here's a jig that we've made that's called a step and repeat jig. And you're going to be surprised how easy it is to use this and how simple it will be to drill evenly spaced holes across any length of board. And here's how I made this. I took 2 pieces of 1/2 inch multi-ply plywood and laminated them together. I really think that that gives it just a little bit more firmness. I then cut a groove in here and inserted a shelf standard. Now you don't have to do that. You can mount it just to the surface. I just like something that's inset. But this works really well. Let me show you how it works on the drill press. Now what I've done is I've set this up in about the spot that I want it. I've drawn an index line. Well, I've driven a pin on the end of this in the upper corner. Usually use a small finishing nail and just clip the head off of it. And because I've got that pin sticking out, I can now stick it into one of the holes in this jig. Now here's the interesting part that actually makes it pretty easy to align. This drill press has a laser scribe on it that shows exactly the center of where that drill bit is going to hit. I can now align an index mark on my line, and I just have to clamp this fence down to the table. Another nice thing about this table is it's got a flat bottom here, which pretty much allows me to place a clamp anywhere. It's a nice feature. Now what we're going to do is I've inserted the pin into one of these bracket holes that it's aligned with my first mark. After I drill a hole, and I'm going to push it up, in my case, up against the edge of that jig, drill the hole. And now count 1 hole, 2 holes, stick it in the next slot, push it up so it's firm, cut my second hole. Count 1, 2, push it up against that slot, drill my third hole. I'll continue doing this until I put a number of holes in that corresponds to the number of shelves, or the adjustment of shelves, 1, 2, that I'm using for my cabinet. And that's how easy this is. Now, if this were a long board, it'd be kind of nice to have some kind of stock support on the outside as we do here. You'll find the plans to make this at woodmagazine.com. It's a great little project. You can use it for a miter saw, band saw, you name it.